This is Radically Alive Women's Edgecast.
Hello, my name is Hannah Abouzahrah.
My name is Annika Korsten, and both myself and Hannah are part of the Edgecast team, and we carry out a lot of interviews and do a lot of background work. And we also have a life. And today we decided ad hoc to have a conversation about miscarriage because we discovered that there's not enough being talked about miscarriage, especially with the statistics that 1 in 4 women actually do have a miscarriage in their life. And yeah, noticing my sadness about how little I have known about women in my life that have had miscarriage, how little they're accompanied in that process, and how little it's processed in order to actually create space for evolution and also deal with the chaos in a family system that it creates.
Yes, and my impulse to have this conversation came from a conversation we were just having and wanting to bring this alive because we've both been through a miscarriage. Yours more recently and mine several years ago now. And I'd love to see what we can pull out of each other and what this conversation can create and bring. So here we are.
For me, it opened this doorway into holding space for life and death. And that, especially in that process, in the process of becoming pregnant, that's really what I realize now in hindsight. And in some ways also during the pregnancy is that's what we do all the time in life too. And I want to talk about this particular instance where actually we as women are really close to this thresholds of holding space for life and death. And what an opportunity it also gives. And I want to step back a few steps actually into the space of conscious conception and also pregnancy and this myths out there. It's a myth for me, or maybe, no, it's not a myth. It's like a normal way of being for many people that when you get pregnant that you don't tell someone for the first 3 months because something can happen and it's the most dangerous time of a miscarriage. And my anger during that time that wanted to share that I'm pregnant because I want to celebrate with humans that I'm pregnant. And at the same time, when I'm then miscarrying, I also can grieve with the people that I'm not pregnant anymore. And so that I'm landing in reality with this process. And by not doing that, I'm not in the joy with the village around me. I'm going in isolation. And when I then miscarry, most likely I'm also in isolation because I feel shame or guilt or whatever to not be in connection in the process of it. And this creates a whole isolated bubble of the experience. And so this is really like what's sparking my interest to have this conversation with you, how we can do this different as a village together, this process.
Yeah, and what I love as you're speaking is that I had that exact experience of not sharing in those first few 3 months and going through a miscarriage, one of 3, and not feeling able to share about it because I didn't want to be too much or whatever the stories were. But what I love about speaking with you about this is to see the evolution in the space through our combined history or herstory and stories of what I went through with the 3 miscarriages and then your more recent one, which seems like an evolution of what happened prior to that. Yeah.
Would you start sharing about your journey of your 3 miscarriages so that people can follow how it's been, like the different stages of the 3, and then also what it enabled and opened up for you in the evolution of birthing Evelyn, your current daughter?
So the first one happened when I was around 18, so quite a few years ago now. I can't do the maths right now. 15, 16,
What's your age
15
right now?
years ago? No, it can't be that. It can't be that much. Maybe it is that much. Yes, so I became pregnant and it was a bit of a shock, and I decided to keep the pregnancy, keep the baby. Talking about the miscarriage specifically, it came after having decided to go for an amniocentesis, which is a test to check for Down syndrome specifically, because I was told that I had an abnormal hormone level, and this was the option given to me. And this test carries a 1% chance of miscarriage. And I chose to go for it. And I went for it. I did the test.
Just to give people a context, so it seems like that you were connected to the hospital medical system at the time,
Yes.
because you also tested your hormone levels.
Yeah, exactly. I went through very standard procedures around pregnancy and scanning. Yeah, after I had decided to keep the baby. Yes, but so at this point, what I remember from the amniocentesis itself was that the woman who had injected me with a very long needle, which goes into the amniotic sac to pull out fluid to then test, which was very painful. What I noticed was that she put a plaster over like a little mole instead of the needle site. And it was something very absent-minded for me at the time, but I remember noticing it. And a day later, I was doing a long drive up to see my nan who lived in the north of England, and I had the test in the South London, so 300-mile journey, driving by myself, and I noticed cramping on this journey. And when I got to my nan's, that evening that I arrived, I was cramping every half an hour or so during the night.
Which week were you in?
This was at 4.5 months, so quite significant, possibly around the 18-week mark. And I managed to have fitful sleep, but it got to the morning and I decided to ring my mother, because she also went through around about 5 miscarriages, because I thought I was having a miscarriage. I thought this was what was happening. And she said, yeah, it sounds like it. Wake Nan up, go to the hospital. So that's what I did. And I got to the hospital, and my experience there was one of the hospital staff skirting a bit around the edges. Like, no one really wanted to tell me or could tell me what was going on. And I was in agony by this point, having a lot of pain relief, but it not really touching the pain at all. I was screaming in agony. And I was there for nearly the whole day. And towards mid-afternoon, one of the nurses came in and decided to allow me to listen to the heartbeat of the baby, which I did. I could hear the heartbeat. And then shortly after that, I had the urge to go to the toilet. So I got up and I went to the toilet and I sat down, and that's when I realized I was not needing the toilet. This was actually the baby deciding to come out at this point. So I shouted for my nan, and then things progressed from there, and the rest is a bit of a blur. I was very numb after that, and choices were given to me, such as, do I want to cremate or bury this baby? And for it to be presented to me in a basket, fully formed, very tiny. And I remember feeling scared, like, am I even allowed to touch this baby? I was so far removed from the whole process. So that was me at 18, having a miscarriage. And fast forward about a decade later, with a new partner, I went through my second miscarriage, and this was very different. It was around 5 weeks gestation. Also very physically painful, but being at the edge of wanting to explore something different. Like, I didn't really want to go to hospital, but I didn't really have any other possibilities at that point. And it got to the point where the pain was so bad that my partner, Elliot, decided, like, we're just going to A&E because we don't know what else to do. He didn't know what else to do. So we got in the car and that's where we went. And they gave me pain relief and then sent me to that's when they sent me to A&E at the hospital. I'd been to like an emergency doctor prior to that. And so, yeah, we got to this place and they wanted to rule out ectopic pregnancy, which is a pregnancy that develops in one of the tubes. So they did a scan. And then they also did a pelvic floor examination, which was really not what my body wanted in that moment. I recognize now. It's like very cold instrument, very clinical, very emotionless, and me going through the motions of that. And again, this thread of like the hospital could not tell me anything more that I didn't already know. I already knew that my body was going through this miscarriage. And it's as if my experience in both of those cases was they didn't want to tell me that I was having a miscarriage. It's like they didn't want to be the bearer of bad news or something like that. It's like very much skirting around the topic almost. So by the time I had my third pregnancy, I decided that I was not going to go to the hospital, that my body knew what was happening. And what happened was something pretty magical. There was a lot of synchronicity about the event, a lot of divine timing. I remember one piece was that me and Elliot had arranged a specific time to meet together in the yoga room where we were living, which is not something we usually did at all. And when we got there, and there were a few other things that happened around that, like Elliot cancelling another space and us ending up in that space earlier than we'd planned. And in that space was the time when the miscarriage started to unfold and the cramping started to happen. And we were in this room together alone and held space for ourselves to go through that. And what I love about the experience was that it was so empowering, and it was close to my 30th birthday. And it was such an empowering experience to be able to start the 30th decade with this reconnection to my body and reconnection to my intuition, and also not completely like pushing out the hospital. I remember my mum also being worried at one stage because I thought that I could have had an infection, because I absolutely did not want to get the D&C, which is also known as the scraping of the womb. And she said, look, if nothing changes within 3 days or you get a fever, will you go to hospital? And I remember promising her that I would do that. And it didn't get to that point. And what I did instead was feel into all the alternative practices that I was drawn to be able to help me to flush my system out naturally. And this took quite a long time. Like, it wasn't just a one session, scrape out the womb and that's it. It was really a slow process of many different pieces, which ended in a very potent moment. I remember of a day after having a craniosacral therapy, feeling this gush of blood and finding this quite large chunk of bright red tissue, and just knowing in all my bodies that this was the last piece. This was the final piece. There was nothing more to come. And what I love about that is this inner knowing that was there, that was available to me in that moment.
Which week was it, Hannah?
It's a little bit hazy because I think the pregnancy stopped at around week 9, between week 9 and 11. But there was a period of 1 to 2 months where I wasn't really doing anything about it until I then decided, okay, this obviously is not going anywhere. So I took then matters into my own hands. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. And what I'm interested around that is for you to share your own experience, because I think, yeah, as I said before, this evolution in the space happening, and I'd love to hear your own experience with, your connection to your body.
First, I like to celebrate, to witness this evolution in you and the sense of empowerment. I think it's really potent to recognize this intuition in yourself again. And also acknowledging that at that point you would have started maybe more going into the transformational space as well, and also doing feelings work. So coming closer inside than being numb in life, where it's not possible to have that connection and this embodiment that's possible to start trusting your own impulses again.
Yes.
And
yeah, and when you say that, it reminds me that part of the third miscarriage, me taking a stand for moving the energy was a couple of emotional healing sessions around, me being a mother. I think that was an important piece.
my journey starts with taking a stand for a different journey, for the whole journey of, I don't even know what to call the whole journey, which it has no word. It needs to be invented. The conscious conception, the conscious pregnancy, the conscious birth, the conscious parenting. This is a whole package. And in my case, it was really clear that I wanted to create village around my journey. And it started off with gathering women around me when I decided to go on this quest to become pregnant with Martin here in Europe, and gathering 24 women around me that kind of came with me in the token of a beat that they gave me, and many beautiful words and constant connection. And also women that I kept updated about that process. And so I guess energetically, I started creating a field around me, and a field of like, I'm not doing this alone. This is a journey to be shared. I'm not going to do this in isolation, because this is more than just me going through pregnancy. This is about creating a different culture of how can a being be welcomed into the world consciously, and also in village together with other people that are turned on by connecting with this being the moment it's conceived and coming into the world. And right from the beginning, I could feel this shame in myself of like, well, can I even share this? Because, and this is related to any project really out there. It's not just pregnancy, but this, but I haven't succeeded yet. I haven't delivered the baby yet. So how can I even share now what's happening? And it's a bit related to what we were talking about at the beginning, this keeping it secret, because what if? And it still is, and it has been such a joy and such a sadness and scared and an angry process to have women in particular come alongside me and this journey that are totally a yes, and that are a yes for anything that's happening in that space, because they feel the surge of like, wow, you're going, like, this is amazing. You're going, and you're going for something different. And in order to go and do something different, you're like pioneering, and you have no idea how it goes. And you go anyway, because otherwise you cannot create a different culture. And so that was the conscious conception journey, which mostly ended up in monthly emails I sent to women. I then did conceive when I manifested to conceive, which was in June. So this is the start of the power of declaration, the power of manifesting. Like, not only was there a man that was willing to walk alongside me, because at the time, at some point, I was prepared to find sperm, and suddenly there's a man in my life that wants to create village together. And then also to share this with the woman that okay, I'm conceiving, I'm pregnant, I manifested, and it started. And I remember the time sharing it with you in a closer circle, and the sadness that's been alive in the woman, and the joy of being in the connection of me manifesting what I've been longing for such a long time. And yeah, also for the possibility to see something different happening. Many women shared like, wow, thank you for sharing a different possibility here. I've experienced this and my whatever. And so it's created a healing field, and still creating a healing field for other women to go through their past experiences that have been very different. And then fast forward, I was pregnant 7.5 weeks, and I said to Martin, somehow I'm feeling energetically empty. Something's not happening anymore here. And I was like questioning myself, and he kept listening to me. And it was actually that he said to me, Annika, maybe it's time to say goodbye. So in some ways, he was trusting my intuition more than I was trusting my intuition myself. And I'm really sad and glad having a man by my side that keeps holding this possibility for my intuition being spot on. And so we did a little ritual to not say goodbye to the being, but saying goodbye to all our expectations and fantasies that were connected to the being growing inside of my womb. And it was really powerful. And then actually giving the decision back to the being, whether it wants to keep incarnating or not. And in some ways, yeah, like holding space for life and death in that moment. And then serendipity happened so that through other women that are close to me here, that kind of were manifesting me to go to a festival that was related to birth and pleasure in birth and celebrating life and death and being pregnant and parenting, etc. It was like a family festival, and I happened to be going there. And on the day I was going there, I was already like, I'm not really sure what's happening in my body. I've noticed some gray and brown tissue in my underpants. Kind of like, yeah, there's a possibility I'm having a miscarriage here, but nothing else. And for some reason, I had this clarity in me. I'm going there. Like, it was so clear I'm going there. But besides all the fear, and my pelvis was shaking, and like, yeah, I had a big process in the morning about being scared to go to hospital. I'm not at home, etc. But for some reason, there was this force of like, go there. I spent 8 hours in the train, not having any symptoms, and just being in this joyful, I'm going to this festival. Great. I arrived there. I was talking to my friend. There was a big circle. There were many midwives. And I was like, I need to talk to a midwife. Which midwife shall I talk to? This one. Okay. End of the circle. I said to this midwife, hey, can I have a chat with you? She said, oh, yeah, I saw you already anyway. I want to have a chat with you. It was like, you know. And we sit down, and this woman was like, look, Annika, because I was like, this is what I have, this is the symptoms. Do you think I'm having a miscarriage? Do I need to do anything? She said, look, your body knows what it needs to do. You don't have to do anything. And my whole body just went like, okay, that's all I needed to hear. I know this already anyway, but thank you. And then she downloaded a whole other lineage around midwifery and doulas and this birthing field, which in some ways had nothing to do with my miscarriage. And it was heaven sent that she was with me there. And after dinner, sure enough, also I started cramping like you described. I had my first big blood clot coming out, and the cramping was like all around my pelvis. And I was like, I don't know what contractions are, but a sensation that I can imagine is like that and 10 times bigger. And so, yeah, being with that feeling, having Hannah, a friend here in the room, sleeping with me overnight, talking with Kinu to, hey, are you available at night? She actually went to the women that are in the closest ring of people organizing the festival, let them know. They lit a candle. They were holding space for me. I heard afterwards. So people were, with me in the field, in the process. And I crammed, and I took some chamomilla homeopathic, and that first stopped the cramping, and not the pain and the cramping. Then the cramping came back, and I was like, okay, I'm just with it. And went through the process, and slept the night. Was not a problem. Just slept through the night, woke up in the morning, a big blood clot came out again. I was like, okay, here we are. Realizing, I'm doing this in the toilet and I don't want to. So afterwards, I decided to go on the earth because it felt appropriate to put that blood on the earth. And yeah, funnily, the next morning there was a circle, like a working group that was going to be every morning about miscarriage, stillbirth, and children that had been aborted. And I knew I needed to go to the circle, and it was my processing, my ritual space for the next days to work through. And to be honest, the day after, I was in utter joy. The whole day, I was just so joyful because I was like, this is impossible how I created this to be in the exact location that I need to be with exactly the people that I want. I mean, I wouldn't want to be with anyone different than this field of knowledge that could just jump at a snip if something was to occur and I needed to get something like support. There was a woman, she turned up with raspberry leaf straight away and said, here you go for flushing. I shared my sadness, my grief, my anger, whatever needed to come through. I sat in a circle with other women that had miscarriages. One woman who was pregnant 8 months who said, look, I'm holding space for death still. Like in my family, there wasn't supposed to be a boy born. I've got 3 girls. I had 3 miscarriages. My mother, the boy never came. I still don't know whether this boy is going to live. And I'm like, like what, what's possible in the world? That woman said, I don't know whether this child is going to survive. And I'm holding space for both. Because I've been in both places, and the healing power of talking about it and sitting in the grieving together and sitting in the joy also together to start speaking this, to share with one woman who's writing a book at the moment about Sternenkinder, which is a term they use in Germany. They call them star children, which is a really beautiful name, for the children the souls that have decided to come briefly and then go again. And she's also particularly interested at the moment in interviewing men who are mostly silent about this happening and how much this is clearing up the family system, how much these pieces are carried through the family system and worked through. And it is especially also the case for myself that I, in this miscarriage, work through the miscarriage of my mother. Mostly what's been coming through is releasing this energy of this brother that was never born, and how much this has impacted me my whole life and my relationship with my mother, with myself, with my relationship to death. It's not finished. Yeah. So this has been my piece in the miscarriage, and it still is. And so this huge opportunity for evolution and healing, consciously going through the process and surrounding yourself with it and start speaking about it and still speak about it if you have had a miscarriage. So I'm super turned on to offer such circuits, such spaces where women can start sharing this so that this unspoken death can become reality.
It seems like we're in alignment then, because this has also been coming through more and more recently for me to hold these spaces for women to be able to grieve together and process miscarriage or anything around the topic of pregnancy, like stillbirth, abortion, miscarriage.
And I want to highlight, the intelligence of the body and the, it's not coincidence that you miscarry. There's something, and there's many explanations, and they're all stories, and you can choose which story you would like to have in that context, but it's like, wow, how intelligent. My body knew that this was not meant to be here. Maybe the soul just needed a small, short, brief incarnation. Maybe my body's not up for it. Maybe I needed to practice first, whatever it is. But to delete the stories that I'm not good enough, that something's wrong with me, that I will never, that I have a disease, I don't know what stories are out there, like I'm yet to hear about all what you can tell yourself afterwards that would haunt you for the rest of your life, that you miscarried a child. And also to think that you can't be getting pregnant again afterwards, or that you cannot have children because you miscarried, or you should not, or whatever, I think what I'm coming to realize is this multitude of facets and possibilities, such as in life, in this pregnancy birthing process. It's like no story is the same, and none what happened is the same. Hearing a story of this midwife saying, Annika, it could be miscarriage, but some women bleed their whole pregnancy. And I'm like, what? I had no idea. Yeah, okay, thank you for this information. I want to put this into my kitty, into my basket of knowledge, so that I can carry on this information to the next generations, that everything is possible, and nothing is like this is the symptom, so therefore this diagnosis matches that, you know. It's like what is going on for you inside of you.
Yes, and how to keep empowering oneself and instead of disempowering with these stories. How can you empower yourself to take your next step?
Yeah, is there anything from you, Hannah, that comes up as a last piece around this topic?
Yeah, it would have to be something about empowerment and believing that you can, whatever that can is about, whether it's about being able to miscarry or give birth to a full-term baby. The wisdom is in your body as a woman who has a lineage, and whatever that lineage is yours to carry forth, and you also have the capacity to create something different for yourself. What is it that you want to create? And to carry that piece with you in your heart.
Thank you.